I want to share a pro tip with you guys that I think is pretty cool, and it's creating a rolling calendar. So, in the case that we've just walked through, we loaded up a discrete set of dates because we only want to analyze the data that we have on hand. Now, in our particular case, we don't need to change that calendar. We won't need to pull in new data or analyze new information over time, right? Everything's fixed. But what if you were in a situation that you had to? What would you do? Maybe you've built a weekly report that you want to refresh with data every day of the week and share with your colleagues or your boss or your client. Rather than creating a fixed calendar and updating it over time, we're going to use some M code to create a calendar that will be based on the current point in time. So it'll act as a rolling calendar that evolves as time goes on. So I'm going to lay out all the steps here in the slides, and then we're going to jump into Power BI and I'll demo what it looks like. So step one, this is going to be a great time to test out that blank query option that I showed you a little bit earlier in this section. So we'll create a new blank query. And then in our formula bar, we're going to generate a starting date by entering something that's called a literal. And you're going to write it exactly as it's shown here with the hash mark, the word date, and then the starting date. Whatever you choose, doesn't matter what the starting date is, but you want to make sure that it's in this year, month, date format. So in the example we're looking at here on the slide, this would represent January 1st, 2020. So from there, you're going to click on the FX icon, which adds a new custom step, and you're going to enter the following M code. Now, I know it looks like it's a lot, and we're not really going to dig in and unpack how this formula is working. We're just going to use this almost like a recipe to create our list of dates. So once you've added that formula, a list will populate in the query editor, and then we're going to convert that list into a table. Once you've added that formula, a list will populate within the query editor, and we're going to convert that list into a table, and then we'll format that column as a date. And then last but not least, if you want, you can add some more calculated date columns like we showed in our last example. You can always add years, months, week, whatever you really want or need using those add column options. But it's really as simple as that. Let's go hop over into Power BI and we're going to write out this formula and I'll show you exactly how it works. All right, so we're back inside our AdventureWorks report and we want to come up to new source, get blank query. And this opens up a brand new blank query for us. So for the sake of consistency, let's update our table name and we'll call this rolling calendar. We'll lock that in. And then the next thing we want to do is come up to the formula bar here, right? And our first step is to use the literal. So this is going to equal hash or pound, then date, and then open paren, and 2023, 1, 1. So I'm going to start this at the beginning of 2023. We'll hit enter. And when you press enter, basically this creates a single value for January 1st, 2023. So again, not super helpful on its own yet, but the next step is to click on the function button and we're going to add a new custom step. And you can see here where it says source, this is where I'm going to type in that long M formula that I shared with you. And I'm going to type this out fairly quickly, but I'll kind of talk it out. So feel free to pause the video as needed. All right, so here we're going to start off with list.dates. And I will expand the formula bar here. All right, and the next piece that we want to add in here is source, comma, and then number dot from, open paren, date, time dot local now. And then we'll do open close paren like the today or now function in Excel. We'll do minus number dot from source. And we'll come over, we'll add one more comma and shift enter to return down. And our last piece here is we're going to add in a duration. Open paren 1, 0, 0, 0. Right, end paren. We've got our closing parentheses. Right, we'll click enter to lock this in. And awesome, you can see that we now have a list of dates that are generated here. So kind of scrolling back up here, without diving into exactly what this M code is doing, in a nutshell, what we're asking it to do is to calculate the current date and then compare that against the literal that we just created, which is our starting date, right? And then based off the difference between those two dates, I want you to create a list of all of the individual values where the duration is 1 day. So it's basically saying, give me a list at the daily granularity between those dates, the literal and the current date based on today, right? So when we pressed enter, we can see that we have created that whole list. See that our start date is here on January 1, 2023. And if I scroll down to the bottom here, keep going, I'm down to April 20th, 2023, which is the date that I'm actually recording this lecture right now. So the cool thing here is that if you come back tomorrow or next week or in a month and you refresh this query, all of those new dates will be added or appended to the end of this list. So that's basically what's going on here with this query. Pretty easy to write out. One thing to keep in mind here is that M is case sensitive, right? So if you did lowercase l and lowercase d here for list.dates, that would throw an error. So if you're running into those types of errors as well, make sure that your syntax along with your capitalization is also correct, right? So the next thing that we need to do is we have this list tools contextual menu that's popped up, and we want to click convert to a table. So here from this window, convert to table, right? There's no delimiter and we shouldn't have any errors. So we'll press OK. We can see that we convert to a table. From here, we want to do our one final step is update our column name. Let's call this date. And then we also want to update the data type, right? We can set that to a date. So that looks great. And what's cool here is this is ready to use just like the other date tables that we've imported. Is we can click here, add column, go back to date, and we can start adding in calculated fields like year. Go back, we could add start a quarter, and maybe the last thing we want to do is add start of month. Right? So in a few minutes, with a little custom M code, we're well on our way to creating a scalable rolling calendar that is going to update based on the current date. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that for the purposes of this course, we don't actually need this rolling calendar. We're really going to rely on the calendar lookup table that we've created instead. So feel free to keep this query or delete it. All right, so that's going to wrap up your pro tip lecture on creating rolling calendars.